So Doug is making me feel like part of the extended family here. So he asked me to do an introduction, which I feel qualified to do.
I hope so.
But I think part of the role of introducing, especially after lunch, is to beckon people back into their seats. And you're on top of this, right? So you've got everybody.
I'm moving people in. I didn't want them to miss out.
Okay. No, people, you do not want to miss the next speaker. My colleague, Gail Feenstra, who is an academic coordinator in our statewide Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education program. We call it SARA, and which I'm director and Gail is deputy director. Gail has been working with SARA since she was very young, right? You've been working there for about 20 years. Yeah. So she started very young.
Thanks,
Gail almost single-handedly put food systems on the intellectual map in California through her efforts. And I was joking this morning about showing up for the easy part. Gail was there for the hard part when there wasn't institutional support for these things. Her background is noteworthy. So she has a degree in nutrition education from Columbia University. And maybe that's enough said.
Yeah.
It's probably better for them to hear from you. Okay, Gail?
Thank you, Tom. Hi, Pima College students, just saying. Well, it is really an honor for me to be here with all of you at the dawn of your talking about your new Sustainable Food Ag Network and Center. And as Tom said, I have been part of the Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program for almost 25 years. Yow. And SAREP is part of our cooperative extension system in California. It's a statewide program, and we're now under the umbrella also of the Ag Sustainability Institute. So that has been a wonderful way to connect our outreach with the research and service that's going on with ASI. So what I'm hoping to do today is share with you some of the things that we've been doing and some of the learning we've had, and I'm hoping through those learnings and the insights that we together have, we'll all be able to inch ever closer to what we mean by a sustainable food system. But for starters, what I'd like to do is just take a moment. We've all been quite busy and thinking about new directions, but I want to take a moment and slow down and just be grateful. I want to be grateful for the hands that have been part of growing our food, for the soil and for the water that has been part of all of our food, for the people who touch our food, and that includes our farmers, our ranchers, for those that distribute and process our food and get it to our retail establishments, to our institutions, to our markets, and especially for those who cook our food. And that includes our institutions like here at the University of Arizona, our colleges, our prisons, our workplaces, our schools, and our homes. And to all of us who appreciate and have a chance to eat the bounty of what comes from Mother Earth. So I think taking this moment of gratitude is important, and I was thinking about this talk earlier in the week, and you know those little tea bags with the sayings on them? So mine said, an attitude of gratitude brings opportunities. So I thought that was especially good for this talk today. And engaging with all these people here, which I know some of them, in local and regional food systems in California has really been my passion for most of my professional career. And one of the things that I like best about my work is that I think that the food system is such a wonderful vehicle for engaging communities, for engaging our youth, and people of diverse ethnic and racial heritages, all for the purpose of making our world a better place. So one of my messages for you today is that as long as we have open hands, open eyes, open hearts, we will be able to find those opportunities with our communities in our food systems. So what I want to do is, on my virtual plate here today, I want to talk a little bit more about what we mean by a food system. That came up, I believe, on one of the sheets. What do we mean by a food system? I want to highlight some of the current trends in our more dominant food system and why we should even care about talking about this topic. Then I want to tell you a little bit more about SARUP and some of the stories of 3 outreach initiatives that we have found to be especially successful in engaging our community partners. And that's food system assessments, or food shed assessments, farm-to-school programs, and urban agriculture. And then I want to end with some overall reflections about these particular initiatives and some directions and thoughts about how you may want to proceed as you're building your own initiatives here in Arizona. So now that everybody's seated, get ready for some activity here. I'd like to know if there are any students in the room today. Raise your hands, and now stand up, please. All students stand up. Look around you, friends. These young people are our future. You all are part of the reason that we are here today. And let me congratulate you for your interest, for your curiosity about these topics, and hopefully your commitment to finding collaborative solutions with all of us. So I want to dedicate the things I say here to you. Now don't stand up, keep standing. Are there any community partners or organizations or government agencies or public agencies or policy folks here today? You stand up too. Wow, there are a lot of you folks. We salute you. You have so much to teach us about how successful community-based food systems really work on the ground. I can tell you from personal experience. We need your wisdom and your experience in working with these young people. And now everybody else. I'm sure from the university, from Cooperative Extension, from other places I have not named. Please stand up. Okay. We are all here together. We are all on this journey, and we are all learning and teaching each other. And I just wanted to underline that, as somebody said in the panel today. This is a joint journey, and I thank all of you for being here. You may sit down. Okay, so how are we all engaged in the food system? Well, when I first began this work in thinking about food systems, I thought of it more as a linear schematic from farm to fork. And indeed, many of the processes from production, distribution, processing, consumption with waste all the way along the way is really part of what we mean by a food system. However, since then there have been a lot of other interesting schematics, and this one is from the University of Wisconsin's E-Extension program. Anybody aware of E-Extension? I just learned about them. Yes, fabulous group. This is a community of practice called the Community, Local, and Regional Food Systems Community of Practice. And they created a more of a circular representation with many of the same parts of the food system. All the components from production, processing, marketing, consumption, waste and recovery, and they even include land access and suitability in theirs. And then around that is another ring which represents the food system environment, an endogenous environment, that those different sectors influence the food system activities but can also be influenced by them. So those are things like ag and food policy, capital and finance, community and culture, relationships, nutrition and health. And then beyond that, we have a third ring, which is the exogenous environment. And those are the larger scale global conditions that make the need for food systems change so urgent. Now that outer circle suggests some of the challenges that our food system currently faces. Many of them are familiar, we've heard them today. Population growth, climate change, globalization, corporate concentration, limits to our natural resources, employment, wealth disparity, etc. And these challenges are growing deeper as we speak. So as a result of these challenges, there are a number of consequences in our food systems which we all face and that people have to live with, and that have also been significant motivators for folks in communities as they consider what they want the future of their food systems to look like. So the first thing that comes to mind, and for me, I'm a nutritionist, so the crisis in human health comes to mind, in which our current food system has not really contributed to good health. Over a quarter of the food we eat is fast food, and over a fifth of all meals are consumed in a car, and ever more variations of those are being created as we speak. I just read a recent report that the kids' food and beverage market is estimated to be valued at $23.2 billion a year, example A here, and that is contributing to all kinds of things, diabetes, obesity, and other preventable diseases. So the advertising that we are having to face is far beyond what the USDA is putting out on how to eat healthy foods, unfortunately. The next concern is social justice. Food security for low-income folks is an issue, increasingly problematic, and we see whole neighborhoods, I know you do here in Arizona, there's a map over there, about neighborhoods that don't have access to wholesome food. And in California, as it is, I'm sure here, for farm labor, it's really no different. Many people face food insecurity in these settings, and in addition to that, poor living and working conditions, and low wages as they struggle to make ends meet, even as they harvest the food that we are eating. And then there's less land and water for food production. In California, in particular, urbanization is a significant influence on our food production. And according to John Landis, who is at the Institute for Urban and Regional Planning at UC Berkeley, he had done some land use projections for the next 100 years. And what he is showing, this is the Central Valley, this is urbanization, the red. And as you can see, we're going to be seeing a breakup of the Great Central Valley, since we are growing from about 30 million people, or over that now, to 90 million people by 2100. The 99 corridor will become a 320-mile linear city. We'll have less land on which to grow our food, and of course, less water, as we're aware. And all of this was done, this is 2100, look at the LA basin, it's really filling in. This is before the current drought situation that has come smack in our faces the last couple of years. And I just read this article in the San Jose Mercury News, which described how farmers in the Central Valley are relying much more heavily on groundwater to meet the water needs. And they're consuming twice as much groundwater as nature is returning to aquifers, and reserves are shrinking by 800 billion gallons a year. So this is something that we definitely need to be addressing. And finally, energy may be one of the most critical resources in food production in this century. Most of our transportation, food processing, not to mention the energy that goes into petroleum-based agricultural chemicals, is based on oil, and lots of it. According to Richard Heinberg, who is a fellow of the Post-Carbon Institute, more than 400 gallons of oil equivalent are used to feed each American each year. And when we add it all up, as many of you have probably heard Gary say, the food system is consuming 10 calories of fossil fuel energy for every 1 calorie of food energy that we're getting out. So then the question becomes, can we change this ratio? Are there alternatives? Can we make food choices that pay more attention to the environment, to our communities, and to human health? Can we make choices, in short, that lead us towards a sustainable food system? Well, I think we can, and we've heard a lot of things about how we can do that today. However, I think we're going to need to refocus our attention on our food production systems, on our food distribution and regional infrastructure, and food consumption patterns, and finally food policy in order to do that. So for the last 28 years or so, SARUP, as Tom explained, has been supporting sustainable food and agricultural systems in California. We were started by an act of the legislature in 1986, and I came on board in 1989. SARUP is one of the oldest sustainable ag programs in a land-grant university in the country. And we define in a nutshell, this is our nutshell version of a sustainable food system, as one that is economically viable, environmentally sound, socially just, and responsible. It's the version that you tell somebody going up the elevator. Okay, but at the center of it, and Gary underlined this when he came to Davis, is health. Health for our communities, health for our land and ecosystems, health for our economies, and health for the people that live in our communities. So that is what we're all shooting for. So the Agricultural Sustainability Institute has a number of priority areas that it has been working on to achieve that goal. One of them is the ag resources and the environment, which one of my colleagues leads with me, or she leads at SARUP. Another is education and leadership, another important goal. And then my area of expertise is in food and society. And in particular, what I want to talk about today is, as part of that initiative or set of initiatives, how do we engage our communities? So I almost feel like you folks are as much experts as I am on this, but I'll at least share with you some of the things that we've been doing. And in particular, as I said, I'd like to focus on 3: food system assessments, farm to school, and urban agriculture. So we'll start with food system assessments. And I've been working on doing these with community partners since the early 1990s. And they've been on a county-wide basis. And I'm going to use San Diego as an example of what we've done. I've put a sort of a sample copy of the San Diego Food System Assessment on the front table here you can take a look at, and a one-pager that describes some of our other food shed assessments that you can take home. But at the core of each of these is 3 things. First, it's very place-based. It's involving the community, and San Diego is the place of avocados, let's just put it that way. We really enjoyed doing San Diego. You would too, if you were down there. We involve and engage diverse groups from the health sector to the ag sector, from the retail sector to cooperative extension, and everybody in between. That is a very important part of these food system assessments. And then we gather data with the community from farm to fork and look at how all these sectors interact. So the first thing we do in designing these food shed assessments is we start with the community who defines their needs. They define how they want to use the food system assessment and who's going to be part of the process. It's very participatory. They need to be in the driver's seat. That's sort of a given. We then go through a process of defining major visions and goals. So in San Diego, and you might not be able to read the little ones, I'll just tell you the big headings here. The 3 major goals that they identified that they wanted to address were better health and well-being of all San Diego residents, ag stewardship of San Diego's environmental resource base, and thriving communities and sustainable economic growth. And then under that were a number of other sub-goals, and then we selected indicators. So we do that in a collaborative fashion. We select indicators or measures that provide us information about the various sectors of the food system, from production, distribution, consumption, food security, waste. The food and ag education and policy are just some of the ones that we generally select. And not only do we gather trend data across the food system for those, across time for these various indicators, but we also, and that's quantitative, But we also gather qualitative data through focus groups, through interviews, through community gatherings, to have folks that have lived in the community a long time tell why these changes are occurring. So for every one that selected, this one happened to be Farms with Direct Sales, we explain the background of each of those indicators. We tell the trends, sometimes compared with California or the US, and then why they're occurring. And here's an example of another one in San Diego. They were interested in animal operations and why that was occurring there. Now, one of the things I wanted to underline yet again is the importance of engaging the community members, and that is probably the keystone element of these food system assessments. They are a great way to build collaborations between universities or colleges or research institutions and community members. Given that, I wouldn't say these are necessarily easy. They're very messy, as has been described, and especially when we're involving students in this process. And they're time-consuming, which is part of what it takes to build community relationships. However, the value of the community taking ownership of this and the group identity that they create as part of this process and the opportunities that we all have to explore engaging or expanding diversity is sort of far outweighs all the other things, even the value of the actual information that we might get about the food system. The result here is what's really happening is we are building relationships. So I just want to share a small story about what happened in San Diego. One of the things that we do, kind of like we did yesterday, is we visit, different ones of us visit different parts of the food system. So in San Diego, we were treated to a tour of the New Roots Community Farm, which is a 2.3 acre strip of land tended by local refugees and immigrants, Somali Bantu, Hispanic, and Hmong groups. And together they are growing, they are cooking, and they are eating their traditional foods and teaching each other how to do that. Now, this did not start out that way on day one, but that's where it has ended up after a couple of years. They're also selling to restaurants. And seeing that site and meeting the people there really sort of cemented for me the importance of how important it is to work across differences in our food system and what it can lead to. So the food system assessments usually end with some sort of conclusions in which we attempt to synthesize what we've learned across the food system sectors. We include recommendations about areas that are ripe for future exploration. And the reports are often used, or we'd like them to be used, to support policy priorities. So, for example, in San Diego, this food system assessment was used as one of the foundational documents for their San Diego Food System Alliance report and for developing their Food System Alliance further. I talked to them after that, and they've moved on from there, but it helped them get to the next step that they needed to go. So I know some of you expressed to me that you may be interested in following up on these, and I just wanted to put a couple of websites up here. Please feel free to go to our SARIP website. We have about 5 of these food system assessments you can look at for just to see what they look like. And we're just about ready to put another one on for San Luis Obispo County, which is very different yet again from San Diego. And then I wanted to point out somebody, I think it was Jordan. Some of the, just to get going, the University of Minnesota has done a state-level food system indicators project, and then for every state in the country, they have taken ag census and economic census and put together indicators, some basic indicators across 3 years, and I actually printed out the Arizona one, so it's a good place to get going and to get some basic baseline if you're interested in that. So that's a good place to start. Now, other cities, San Francisco and Oakland, for example, have used these food system assessments to launch their own food policy councils. And food policy councils, I know, are have begun here in Arizona too, that there are ways for citizens and government officials to convene for the purpose of looking at local food system policy and developing policies that support regional sustainable food systems. So I believe you have a statewide food policy council. Is anybody aware? Somebody's food policy council person? Pima County has one. Somebody said that, I read that Phoenix is beginning to start one too. So there's a number of county-wide efforts, which actually are what's going on in California. We have a statewide one pulling all those 26 or so county-wide ones together. So yay for you, keep working. I think that's a very good way to involve folks. So the second set of examples I want to use, the second set of stories, are on our Farm to School programs. And I decided to include this initiative here today, not just because I love working with Farm to School, but also because Arizona has a very active Farm to School program. And this is an opportunity to build an even stronger one. Some of us just spent a week in Austin, Texas with the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference. There were 1,100 of us from across the country that were sharing together, networking, talking about our challenges, and this is a growing movement. In fact, I would have to say that in the years that I've been part of building local and regional food systems, Farm to School is one of the fastest growing movements that I've seen in my professional career. So what has it been? At the heart often of the Farm to School programs that we've been part of are locally sourced school for the school cafeterias. This is Rodney Taylor. He's maybe called the grandfather of Farm to School movement. This program started in Southern California, Santa Monica, Malibu, sort of against his wishes, but he launched into it and he quickly became a convert and has since then converted many other people across the country. It also includes school gardens, and our gardens aren't anything compared to, I mean, they're good, but the one we saw yesterday at the Monzo Elementary School is so comprehensive. I'm quite impressed. That is part of Farm to School. We also include nutrition education. That can be in the classroom, it can be in the garden, it can be in the cafeteria, along with tasting. And then we include farm tours for our children, so they get to see how commercially food is grown and talk with the farmers. Farmers often come back to the classroom, and so they really get an understanding and they get to harvest food themselves. We offer farm tours for all the second graders in our in town in Davis. And then finally, recycling and composting. Our plates are recyclable. All the food that we have recycling and composting coordinators at all our school sites that then help the kids to recycle and compost the product, which goes back into the school garden, and I'm sure that many of you do that here. So the results are happy kids, kids that love to eat local fruits and vegetables when offered, and we took over 850 school lunch photos. I won't show you the ones with mostly croutons on them, but anyway, these are the good ones. Just try to convince you that fruits and vegetables are taken for the most part. And there is, under her thumb is some chicken, and so it is a full meal because it's on a salad bar, but they have protein and the whole suite of what's necessary in a school lunch. So those are really important. We just finished a project funded by our specialty crop block grant in California, in which we work with 3 school districts in California, a small rural, a very large urban, and a mid-scale. And this shows you a graph of how the procurement changed from beginning to end of the project. All of them increased buying from local farmers. And like I said, they all had different strategies. We worked with them on that, but they all improved. Now, the other thing I want to talk about now is it's part of Farm to School, but it's often a hidden part of Farm to School. We often talk about our kids, but another important audience, stakeholder group, I'm not sure what we want to call them, are the lunch ladies. These are the people that cook that fresh regional product for all the kids. They are the gatekeepers often of getting this food to kids and talking to them about it, marketing it to them. We've been doing cooking classes, professional development with this group, how to use fresh regional products in the school lunch program for probably the last 5 years in Davis. This is Ann Brennan, one of our local cookbook authors, talking with the staff at Davis Farm to School, or Davis Joint Unified School District. We use the fresh local products along with the commodities, because you have to have those in order to keep the lunch prices reasonable. This is Nusrat and Rashda, who are cooking soup, which is one of the themes for the winter cooking classes, and Rashda is the one in the front. She was so excited about the cooking classes that she brought ingredients from home. She's Pakistani, and she made this amazing yellow dal soup that we all got to try. And the food service director actually let her make an Indian Pakistani meal for the high school. And so all of the kids got to try it. And I would have to say that, let me see if I have some more pictures here. One of the things that comes out of this, besides really great food for the kids, is there is a certain amount, a lot of pride in cooking this food and being recognized as the professionals they are. And I think that often these folks get overlooked. They're at the bottom of the totem pole, yet these are the people that I think we really need to recognize. Here's a couple of the new dishes that they made. This is a pepper chicken rice bowl and a kale salad. I want to talk a little bit about the urban school district, which Jennifer Labar is the food service director there. Now that's a different story. 37,000 meals a day, 70% free and reduced. She's got amazing programs. She's got a logo called Oakland Eats Garden Fresh, so she's connecting the gardens with the lunchroom. And another thing that was developed as part of the Farm to School program was the 22 produce markets that she has on site in 22 of the schools. And the products are sourced locally from local organic farms. I'm going to show you more pictures in a minute, and from the very local 9 Bay Area counties. So the parents are volunteers and they run those farm stands. When we were touring the Oakland Farm to School program, we had the good fortune of getting to sit in on a cooking class that the kids were doing. So they have an early dismissal day on Wednesdays, and some of them go to this cooking class. And so this was a rice vegetable peel-off that they cooked for us, and they had all the ingredients written out, and they stood in a line across the room, and they each read an ingredient. And then they passed it to the next one, read the ingredient, and told us about how they had put that together. It was very cute. It's great. They were very proud of it. And then look at this. This is an example of the produce stand. And like I said, this is pretty much at cost, not much more, because of a relationship we have with our local organic distributor there. And the products are purchased by families after school and brought home. And in addition, some of the students are cooking from the produce stand for like an after-school snack. They're doing, I think it's burritos or something like that, using vegetables. It's a pretty amazing operation. And I think it's a wonderful way to include community members in a project that's catering to the cuisines of those particular ethnic groups and involving them in their neighborhoods and with their children. I want to recognize one person here today from Arizona. That's Cindy Gentry. Cindy, can you please, is she here? There she is. Cindy is your Farm to School statewide coordinator. And all things Farm to School, she is a great person to connect with if you're interested in following up. I also had the good opportunity to meet some of your grantees from Flagstaff that just got a USDA grant. So they are doing some wonderful things, including a greenhouse building and Navajo children's garden. So they're pretty amazing. University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. Are there folks from Cooperative Extension here? You folks over there. Yeah, I read about what you're doing in promoting school gardens. and farm to school, so yay for you. And I heard about this Tucson village, which we'll get to in a minute. And the Arizona Department of Agriculture, I just got to meet you. Where did she go? Maybe she had, oh, there she. So they are doing some buyer-grower meetings that connect school food service buyers to growers, so all over the state. So that is a wonder. I would really like to follow up, because I think that California could really benefit for something like that as well. So congratulations on all of your wonderful farm-to-school work, and I think these are just a few of the ways that you can engage with community partners. So the last set of stories I want to tell you about are urban agriculture. And I first got involved with urban agriculture soon after I had started with the Sustainable Ag program. And one of the first programs that we got involved with is this one in San Francisco that was organized by SLUG, the San Francisco League of Urban Gardeners. And great name. Mohammed Nuru was the very dynamic leader of that. But these kids were growing food in a place that used to be drug deal. I mean, the land was sort of more or less useless. And he converted into a place where they hired kids after school to grow food, and they, in the back, they actually began planting trees. They put a windmill up. They put places where people could sit. So it's still there. Mohammed Nuru has moved on, but it is a wonderful example of urban agriculture. And not only this like a 4.5 acre site, but they also built these raised beds in a housing complex right next door. And I was used to that. And then when we went to your gardens yesterday, I saw the sort of inverse of this, where they're sunken beds. And I'd never seen a sunken bed before, but because of the water situation, you know, that makes so much sense. So anyway, we had raised beds here. And many of the kids that are part of growing food also get to sell it at farm stands or at farmers markets in many of our communities. Or this is in Los Angeles. It's the Victory Garden Project that's coordinated by our cooperative extension down there. And that involves community garden volunteers that are training other community members to teach their neighborhoods how to grow food. So it's a great option.
People address the question of whether the land that's now being donated or given to these community gardens are free of environmental toxic chemicals that may not be so great for everybody.
Yeah, no, there's definitely testing. So there's a lot of, especially when cooperative extension has been involved, they test the soil, but that's part of the reason they use the raised beds, so that they can get soil sort of imported they know is good to use, because sometimes it takes a while to get those toxic things out, or maybe you can't. So that is something that you definitely, one of the first things that need to be part of the process. You're right. I'm just telling you the end part, where all these, you know, folks are enjoying the produce and selling it and so on. But the whole process of it is a community-based process that it involves a lot. I know the folks from Cooperative Extension back here probably have a lot of expertise about doing that in the communities here. So one of the things that happened with us in Cooperative Extension is a couple of years ago, the leadership in Cooperative Extension decided they were really excited about urban agriculture, which, whoa, that we were quite delighted by that. And so they actually funded a group of us to look a little further and find out about urban agriculture in California. First of all, we wanted to do a needs assessment. We started with a literature review and an annotated bibliography that documents the impacts of urban ag, the social, the economic, and the health impacts. And we've scoured the literature because so many people need to provide that kind of data to whoever it is, their county board of supervisors or their neighborhood associations or whoever, to make the case that urban agriculture is going to provide benefits. So this is on SERP's website now. You're free to have a look at it if it can be helpful, and all the resources are there. But then we also wanted to do a couple surveys, one with Cooperative Extension and the other with urban farmers and policymakers to find out what their needs were in moving this forward. So I'm just going to tell you some of the results of this. Those two surveys we've written up and published in an article in the Journal of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Community Development. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that journal, but this will be available very soon, the results of what we found in California. But I'm just going to take out some of the parts that talk about what the urban farmers told us they needed. So here's some of the main barriers, I guess you would say, that they said to us. Finance and business planning, some of the production issues, pests, soil and crop planning, the regulatory and liability issues, and then marketing. And then when we said what would be the most helpful topics that we could gather together information for you, and it kind of follows what the needs were, business planning information, marketing opportunities, water and pest management, record keeping, and how to do value-added products. And we're putting together a portal, an urban ag portal of information right now that's going to have things that are going on in California, but also we've been looking across the country at, because there's some really good sites out there that have good information. We're trying to put it all in one place so people, it can be kind of like a go-to place, maybe a solution center on urban agriculture. And then we said, what would be the best way for you to get this information? And the first thing they all said was in-person workshops, preferably on farms. Secondly, online resources, which we're working on now. You can't reach as many people with the in-person, but it's definitely the most effective way to share information. They wanted bilingual materials. They wanted simple written materials and not a lot of text. Academics sometimes go on and on, but they wanted it very, very simple. And then they mentioned they wanted some YouTube videos. Create some short little targeted kinds of information, but make it short and to the point. So we're in the process of doing that. And then we just got another grant from Cooperative Extension to do urban ag youth tours. And this was something that kind of came out of a group discussion when we were on a urban ag tour. And that is, so often our Cooperative Extension folks aren't necessarily connected with the good work that community groups are doing. So the thought is to have the community groups take the lead, particularly the youth that work with them, and have them be the tour guides for other community partners and Cooperative Extension who would go to 5 or 6 sites. We have 4 tours planned in the next 2 years, and they would tell about it. They would also be ambassadors, basically, for the organizations that they work with. So this is going to be, and we're going to put together a curriculum that goes with that, with the community partners. So that's starting up in the summer, and we're really looking forward to getting that going. And then I couldn't resist this because I was looking at what you all are doing, and as I promised, the Tucson Village Farm. This is such an amazing operation, and apparently it just got some award. And your Cooperative Extension, our folks are working on this, and it's built by and for youth. It focuses on many socioeconomic backgrounds. It educates students about the food system and nutrition and health, and it fosters economic development. And I'm thinking to myself, how much better can it get? We need to be working with you folks because this is exactly the kind of a model that we need to be all over, not just Arizona, but all over California. So I'd like to close with a couple of thoughts from my experience about how we can use the food systems to more effectively engage our communities. I think in addition to having open eyes, open hearts, open hands, like I mentioned at the beginning, I believe that community engagement has a lot to do with creating spaces. And I heard that sprinkled throughout today. Maybe not that directly, but that's what I think what it's all about. I think it's about creating economic spaces, new forms for developing financial capital and partnerships that we may not have thought of, collaboration, cooperatives. We need new environmental spaces, new ideas for creating resilient production systems, and ways to link our urban and our rural constituents around that. And then finally, I think we need new political and social spaces. We need new ways of interacting so that all of us are respected and we all have a voice in the development of our food systems. So in short, I think we need diversity, we need imagination, and we need democratic participation to move our food system to a place that engages all of us in building a sustainable future. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions, or folks in Pima, the Pima College folks? Yes.
Just that if anyone wants to know any more about Farm to School, we actually have some flyers if anyone.
I was supposed to announce that and I forgot. I'm sorry. She's got them here, all about what's going on in Arizona. And we have additional information about California up here. Yes.
I was wondering whether you were including film, documentary filmmaking, in any of your projects, and if so, how that was incorporated.
That is something that is on my agenda. I would love to do that more. I think we have done it some in ASI. We have filmed some of the events that we have done, and they are on our website. And that has actually been quite helpful for people understanding the kinds of interactions that we've done, both across the university, but beyond that. I haven't personally done it with any of these projects I've mentioned, but I'm gearing up to do that. I think the short videos may be the way that I would like to personally try to explore that. But thank you for that. Yes.
So Gail, often when you have some funding, whether it's from government or a foundation, you know, there tends to be a little bit of obsession with metrics of success and reporting. And I'm wondering if you guys have come up with any creative ways of evaluating and reporting the successes beyond, I mean, we all love to tell the stories, but then sometimes people are like, okay, show me this has made a difference. So
I know.
How do you respond to that?
Well, we try to do the both, the qualitative and the quantitative. That's the best I can say. When you write a grant, often you have to have metrics that you follow. And one of the things that we have done, besides the qualitative, just telling the story, is inviting those funders to some of these events, some of the tours we've done, some of the final, and where they get to actually meet the people that are involved in these. When that tour I told you about in Oakland, when we toured the whole Farm to School program, the gardens, we had our funder from CDFA, California Department of Food and Ag, come with us, and he was blown away. I mean, he had no idea. You can't get it reading, you know, online. I mean, I was listening to Moses' story this morning, and I was saying to the person next to me, you know, he can tell a great story. It's nothing compared to being there. I mean, it is so much more if you can involve them in part of the sharing in any kind of physical way. So that's the best I can say. We're thinking about doing some oral histories, I mean, or, you know, more storytelling kinds of things, but haven't done that. I like this video idea. I think that's another way that we could explore that. If you've got any ideas, please pipe up. Yes.
I thought I might respond to that. My name is Nick. I work at the food bank here in town. And we were on a farm to school program, and we had to do exactly that as part of a grant to develop an evaluation scheme. And so we actually partnered with U of A, with the College of Public Health, and had a research intern develop what turned out to be a really cool project, so I just thought I'd mention it.
Great.
Instead of doing a survey, which is really boring, what we did was we developed a bingo game, a fresh food bingo. So it had things on it like, I like to make lunch, or I like to make dinner with my parents, or I've eaten a long skinny vegetable, or I like to eat food that I grow. So she used the social cognitive theory, and so all of the questions were either based on their personal beliefs, their environment, or their behavior. And so after doing that evaluation across 4 of our schools, Monza was one of them, we did find statistically significant changes, positive yes answers in those schools where the gardens had been established for a longer period of
So
time.
you pay bingo once a year? And then
Yeah, well, so.
More
we had
often.
time to do a pre-post. So
Oh.
what we did was we did 2 schools that had more experience with the program versus 2 schools that were just getting gardens started. But yes, in theory, you could do pre-post or just do it every year and kind of track the changes. So I'd be happy to share that with anyone if you want to find it.
Yeah, thank you. That's an interesting game theory, I guess. That's not like economics, forget it. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, Gail, I mean, just a comment, maybe you could say a bit more, because these are the photogenic stories, but I know in your program there's quite a bit about more conventional monitoring and evaluation.
Oh, yeah.
And even the photographs of the kids' plates that was part of
An evaluation. Yeah. So that's that good point, Tom. We do have to gather a lot of quantitative data. Much of it comes, at least from us. The slide I showed with the graph of procurement going up, that came from looking at invoices, hundreds of invoices with the school districts to find out what they bought and from whom and whether or not it was considered local. And so that was that. The photo survey, or it wasn't survey, it was the photographs of the school lunch plates. We did that just to find out what kids were putting on their plates, but now it's really grown as a technique, and so you can do a pre-post surveys with the photographs. You can also do instead of plate waste, you take a picture before, you put a little tag on it, and then you take a picture after, so you can kind of get an estimate of what has been eaten. So that's really important for some folks. So we are very careful about getting the quantitative data. Yes.
Thank you for your talk. I'm interested if you could talk a bit more about when you approach the food systems assessment.
Yeah.
You said one of the first things you do was really try to get the sense of the need from the community.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in California it's as much the case as here that there's many communities, and how you even identify like who is representative of what communities, and how, and particularly something that we encounter in the Food Council a lot is how do you reach specifically producers, and your strategy was for that?
Well, we don't go to them. They come to us. So it's usually an already designated, fairly diverse group, some food system alliance, food system collaborative that is in a community that really wants to look at their communities, and they've tended to be countywide food systems. In the ones that I've been part of, there have been several representatives on that council or alliance that are either farmers or ranchers or fisher folk. So they represent the interests of those folks. We've had the Farm Bureau on there. We've had other representatives of NGOs that work with farmers. So it's really important to have that sector, and it tends to be a difficult one to have, but it's really important if you want to get the farm to fork look. Yeah. You want to say something, Doug?
I wanted to ask about, in the school programs, or any of these, have you looked at any diffusion? Like, if you're working with the children, is this information being out to the families?
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking at changes in the purchases of families? For
Yeah.
example? Because children have great influence with parents
Yes.
buy.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And are their habits of purchasing food changing?
Yes. We are part of another project right now called Shaping Healthy Choices, and they just put some of the results of that project, which is a 3-year project, also funded by Ag and Natural Resources, our cooperative extension. And it's working with 3 school districts. So not only were they looking at the regional ag piece, but they were looking at changes in kids' consumption patterns, their attitudes, and also the parents' attitudes and changes at home. So they had a whole community outreach piece. There was a newsletter that was part of it, and there was an activity section to it. There were biomarkers, the whole thing. It was big. And so that is an important, we're just beginning to get into that aspect of how Farm to School reaches into families, and it definitely does. I mean, the results were looking good. Yeah. So you might want to look that up online. It's the nutrition department. Sherry Zeidenberg-Schur is the PI. Yeah. Anything else? I guess it's about time.
Thank you.
Thank you.